Good evening. You're with KGRA and Lake Charles. It's exactly 10 o'clock right now, and it's time for the Rock and Roll Show on a Saturday evening for you. It's brought to you by Jay Stereo, and we'll get started right now with some music from Neil Young.
There's a lot to learn. Look out for my love. Look out for my love. Open my eyes to a new kind of way.
Yes, indeed. Rock and roll lives with Journey. Feeling that way in Any Time from the Infinity LP. And the Electric Light Orchestra, indeed. Birmingham Blues before that. Started things off with Neil Young from Comes a Time. And looking out for my love. Look out for my love. 10:15 right now. You're with Robyn. Listen, good music, just like whether it be good rock and roll, good jazz, good folk, whatever your choice may be, doesn't sound good unless you've got a good stereo. And I tell you what, those folks down at J Stereo know what they're talking about. When you walk in and tell them how much you want to spend or what size room you want to put your stereo in, they won't oversell you. They'll sell you what you need, no more or no less. And I bought a system there 3 years ago from the one here in Lake Charles, and I've been satisfied with it ever since. So you might go on down there. They've got some of the best sound equipment around, and I haven't been dissatisfied with their service either. If it breaks down, they'll help you out and fix it as fast as possible. So why don't you check down some of the sound equipment down at Jay's Stereo in Lake Charles and Sulphur. Go down to the Lake Charles store and see Brian and ask him to show you around in the sound room. They got some really nice stuff there. Rock and roll continues right now with some music from Bob Seger. You're with Robyn, and this is the Rock and Roll Show. Rock and roll is alive and well and living in the hands of Bob Seger from the Live Bullet LP. We had Ramblin' Gamblin' Man, Heavy Music, and Catmandu. A fine rock and roll number indeed. 10:33 right now. You're with Robyn on the Rock and Roll Show. Cloudy with a slight chance of rain tonight is our forecast, turning partly cloudy Monday. With a low tonight in the low 40s and the high for tomorrow in the low 60s. Currently in Beaumont, out there cruising around. It's 51 degrees, and here in Lake Charles we have cloudy skies and 50 degrees, 10 degrees Celsius. We've got some Uriah Heep, Leonard Skinner, and Journey, and a bunch of other better stuff coming up. But first, listen, if you're a runaway and you need shelter, food, or medical help, call the Runaway Hotline at 1-800-231-6946. It's hassle-free and toll-free, so do that. That's 1-800-231-6946. Listen, have you ever gone out and bought one of your favorite albums, and when you got it home it was either warped or didn't play right for some reason, scratched heavily or whatever? Well, J Stereo's, Lake Charles, and Sulphur, that happens very rare when you buy an album. Some of the albums you heard tonight on the Rock and Roll Show were bought or purchased at J Stereo here in Lake Charles. Go down there and see Susie if you get a bad cut, and you buy one from her, and if it's bad, they'll replace it absolutely free. But chances are you won't get a bad one, and they do have some good vinyl down there. So go down there. That's J Stereo in Lake Charles and Sulphur, and ask for Susie. Rock and roll continues with Foreigner here on the album station. Rock and rolling into the past with Grand Funk Railroad, Shining On, one of their better days. And Hard, White Lightning, and Wine before that. And started things off with Foreigner, Love on the Telephone. That's from their new one, Head Games. And it's one of the better tracks in there. Good evening, you're with Robyn. This is Nova 104, and you're at the Rock and Roll Show. Listen, if you think you've suffered housing discrimination because of race, religion, sex, or national origin, get help by calling the Housing Discrimination Hotline. Number to call is toll-free. It's 1-800-424-8590. And I'll tell you what, if you're out cruising in your car right now and the Rock and Roll Show is coming through loud and clear, you know there's nothing better than a good clean stereo for your car so that you can reproduce the music off the airwaves. Or if you want, you can go cassette or 8-track too and have all three for you. And FM's got to sound good. Well, you can get you a good tape deck down at J Stereo. I don't mean just a good one. I mean the best, too. And they'll sell you one that fits your car so the acoustics are right, because every car is made different. So go down there to J Stereo on Lake Charles and Sulphur. Go down to the Sulphur store. Ask to see Mike. He'll show you around, show you some of the finer decks, and show you something within your price range. J Stereo, Lake Charles and Sulphur. Here's something from Kansas's Two for the Show on the Album Station and the Rock and Roll Show. Good evening, it's 11 o'clock. You're with the Rock and Roll Show. This is KGRA in Lake Charles and Nova 104. Rock and Roll lives with Bachman Turner Overdrive, some Not Fragile for You, Freewheelin', and Aerosmith before that, Back in the Saddle from Rocks. Free started things, well, I didn't start things off, but Free before that with All Right Now. The Eagles, Those Shoes, and started off with some live rock and roll from Kansas's Two for the Show. Portrait He Knew and Carry On Wayward Son, some fine sounds coming your way. 11:14, good evening, you're with Robyn. This is the Rock and Roll Show. Hope everyone's having a nice one out there and getting into some good jam. Taking a look at some of the concerts happening in our area. The Outlaws, April Wine, which you will hear later on the show. And 38 Special will be at the Houston Coliseum on January 19th. The Styx will be at Centroplex here in Baton Rouge on the 27th. And Point Blank will join them on the 28th and 29th in the Houston Summit. I hear the 28th is sold out. Rick Derringer, which you'll hear in just a few minutes, will be at the Palace in Houston on the 31st of January. And coming up February 2nd, it's Toto at the Houston Music Hall. We got some Eagles, and the Amazing Rhythm Aces are touring, and they'll be at the Houston Summit on the 4th and on the 5th, but the 5th is sold out, so you might check into the 4th. And the Eagles, if you miss them there, will be here in Louisiana at the LSU Assembly Center in Baton Rouge on the 11th, so you might want to get into that. Further concert information or ticket information can be acquired just as easily. Just dial 433-NOVA. Listen, if you're into some of the nice rock and roll you're hearing right here on the album station, you might want to go out to J Stereo and check out some of the good stuff they have down there. Quality tapes, cassettes, and albums for you, and the biggest selection, one of the biggest selections in town. So go down there and ask for Susie. Tell her you heard it on the Rock and Roll Show and Robyn sent you. Meanwhile, some Lynyrd Skynyrd for you here on the album station. Rock and roll lives with some southern rock and roll from ZZ Top. That's from Rio Grande Mud and Francine Rick Derringer before that from Spring Fever, still alive and well. And started off with Leonard Skinner. Ooh, that smell from... That's Street Survivors. 11:28 right now. You're with Robyn. Cloudy with a slight chance of rain tonight. Partly cloudy Monday. The low tonight in the low 40s and the high for tomorrow in the low 60s. Currently in Beaumont, it's 51 degrees, and here in Lake Charles, it's cloudy. 50 degrees and 50 degrees and 10 degrees Celsius. You're on a rock and roll evening with the Rock and Roll Show. Listen, if you're a professional musician looking for work, why don't you call the Musicians National Referral Service toll free for help at 1-800-527-4260. You know that some of the albums you hear, well, all the albums you hear can be purchased down at Jay's Stereo. You can find them down there. Go down there and just ask for Susie and tell her you heard an album on the Rock and Roll Showcase and you'd like to get you a copy of it, and she'll help you out. And they don't just handle albums, though. They have 8-track tapes and cassettes. Not only that, they also carry blank tapes for you recording buffs, and also car stereos and home units, and even some television sets. So you might want to go down and check. They have a variety of name brands so that you can pick your choosing and what's in your price range, and they also have the best of the variety. So you won't get anything that'll let you down. Plus, they service everything they sell. So go down there and check out Jay's Stereo and tell them you heard it on the Rock and Roll Showcase. Got some music from Nazareth for you here on the album station. Some Canadian rock and roll for you here on the Rock and Roll Show. It's a group called Triumph, the Blinding Light Show and Moonchild from their very first LP. And before that, we had some Nazareth and Hair of the Dog, Changing Times. 11:43 right now. You with Robyn. Hope everyone's enjoying the Rock and Roll Show. It's brought to you by Jay's Stereo. Listen, if you're interested in leading a drug-free life, give Narcotics Anonymous a try. There's a Narcotics Anonymous meeting held every Tuesday night about 6:30. It's at the Substance Abuse Center at Chenault. For more information, why don't you dial 491-2355. Meanwhile, we've got some David Bowie for you here on the Rock and Roll Show.